This is Sam Wilson, Assignment 2 Psychology. I'll be talking about stress, anxiety and arousal in sport. Lazarus and Folkman defined stress as a pattern of negative physiological states and psychological responses occurring in situations where people perceive threats to their well-being which they may not be able to meet. Two terms are used for stress: eustress and distress. Eustress is good stress that can give you a sense of fulfillment. Some athletes seek this kind of stress to improve their skill and create a challenge. Distress is bad stress. This is an extreme form of anxiety, nervousness, and worry come from this kind of stress because of a perceived inability to meet demands. There's a diagram for stress which has a few different stages in. Stage 1 is some form of demand placed on the athlete. Stage 2 is how the athlete perceives the demand. Stage 3 is an increase in arousal levels. Stage 4 is the outcome which directly affects performance. There is 4 main causes of stress. Internal, which is illness, psychological factors, not getting enough sleep. External, could be a noisy environment that's too quiet, people being rude, or travel, or traffic in travel. Personal, this includes friends, family, finance, and health. And occupational, cause of stress, which is related to jobs or maybe being unemployed. When someone's stress response is activated, the sympathetic or parasympathetic system is used. The sympathetic system is the fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic system is what helps us relax. Both are part of the autonomic nervous system. A good example of stress is Ronda Rousey. She lost her belt in a title fight against Holly Holm. She then waited a few weeks before she came back to fight. When she came back to fight, she wouldn't do any interviews and wouldn't go into any press conferences. Then when she actually came to the fight, she lost the fight. It's thought that that's because of the stress, and having to do all the different interviews was putting too much stress on her, and having to carry all the weight on her shoulders caused her to have even more stress, which then caused her to lose the fight. I'm now going to talk about anxiety. Anxiety is a negative emotional state that is characterized by feelings of nervousness, apprehension, or worry. The source of anxiety is similar to stress, but are made different by the response. There's 2 main types of anxiety: trait anxiety, which is a behavioural tendency to feel threatened even in situations that aren't threatening, and to respond with high levels of anxiety, and the state anxiety. State anxiety is a constantly changing mood state that is an emotional response to any threat. There's 2 kinds of symptoms: cognitive state anxiety, which is mental, and negative thoughts like worry. Symptoms of this include concentration problems, fear and bad decision making. Somatic state anxiety is the other kind, which is physical. It's physiological changes like sweating, increased heart rate, and increased respiratory rate. It can even lead to complete muscle tension, which is when someone freezes in a sport. A good example of this is a footballer called Owen Hargreaves, who had a knee injury, and when he came back to play in a match, he played really badly, and it's thought that it's because he had so much anxiety built up because he was worried and because he hadn't been playing for so long that he just couldn't perform as well as he used to. I'm now going to talk about arousal. Arousal is a physiological state of alertness and anticipation that prepares the body for action. It is not positive or negative. It can increase heart rate, sweating, and rate of respiration. It can also increase attention. There's a few different theories on arousal. The first is the drive theory. This is the theory that the relationship between arousal and performance is linear, so performance equals arousal times skill. Then there's the inverted U hypothesis. This view says that there is an optimal level of arousal, also theorizes that if anxiety is too low or too high, there is a steady drop in performance. The third one is the catastrophe theory. This theory is similar to the inverted U, but it says that there is a dramatic drop in performance once levels of arousal are too high or low. When arousal is higher, an athlete's attention and concentration is narrowed. So, like someone playing golf, his arousal might be really high, so that his attention is narrowed and he can only maybe think of the ball and himself. An increase in arousal can lead to an increase in awareness of anxiety, which can lead to an increase in somatic and cognitive anxiety. One example of this is a hockey player. A hockey player will want to be aroused enough so that he can keep his concentration on what he's doing. So he'll want to make sure that his attention is narrowed so that he can only see the other players, the puck, and then the goal. If the arousal gets too high or too low, he might have his attention in other places and not pay enough attention to the actual game. Next, I'm going to talk about concentration and attention. Concentration is defined as the ability to perform with a clear and present focus. So basically, it's the ability to focus on the task at hand. Focus is defined as the ability to respond to internal and external cues in the attentional field. A person's attentional field is affected by their arousal. If someone is highly aroused, their attentional field will be too narrow. So like a netball player might only be paying attention to the ball, might not be paying attention to the other player on the other side. They could be setting up a certain player or maybe trying to trick them with something. If someone is at optimal arousal, they'll have a moderate or optimal attentional field. This is the perfect attentional field for most sports. Basically anything to do with a lot of different team players, they'll want to be paying attention to all the different team players, but maybe not the crowds and things like that. And if someone has too low arousal level, the attentional field will be too broad. So maybe they're paying attention to the crowd and the audience and what they're saying and what they're doing, which would distract them from the main thing that they're actually trying to do and the sport they're trying to play. It does depend on the sport, because someone like a sprinter will want to have a really narrow attentional field because he's only got one main goal and he shouldn't be paying attention to the other people running with him. If someone's in a sport that has a massive team, they'll want to be paying attention to all of them, so they'll want a broader attentional field. An athlete's concentration can be affected by external factors like audiences or the level of competition, and it can even be affected by their own experience, what they've seen before and how many games they've played might make them a bit calmer. Hannon also produced a model for individual zones of optimal functioning, which proposes that there is a difference between each individual's reaction to anxiety. Some people succeed with high anxiety and some people succeed with low. A good example of concentration in sport is Usain Bolt. When he did his 100-metre sprint, he had to be concentrating on his marker for setting off, and he had to try not to concentrate on the other people that were around him for his sprint. He needed to try only concentrate on himself and get into the finish line in the quickest possible time. Something used a lot in sport is imagery. Imagery is imagining or seeing an image, usually used to increase motivation. There's 3 theories on how it works. There's the bioinformational theory, which believes that it is a response to a stimulus. So maybe if someone's failed at the certain task before, they will imagine that past experience. This might motivate them to not have that same feeling again and do better. Next, there is the symbolic learning theory. This is someone knowing what they're going to do before they actually do it. It's like a blueprint in the mind. Some people will actually go through something over and over again so that they 100% know what they're going to do. After this, there's then the psychoneuromuscular theory. This theory says that imagining an event creates a neuromuscular response, similar to actually being in the event. So someone like maybe in the bobsled would be thinking about the different turns and corners and things. His body would then prepare for that, and then the muscle memory would take over and make it a lot easier for him to actually perform. A good example of this is Conor McGregor. Before he won both title belts, he imagined himself holding both the belts and told people that he was going to get both the belts. He also imagined how he was going to win certain fights, and he also got the nickname Mystic Mac from doing this because he would predict the fights, and the fights would happen most of the time in the ways he would predict them. The next technique used a lot in sport is self-talk. Self-talk is the conscious and unconscious dialogue that occurs in someone's mind. It can be said internally or externally. Positive self-talk can help with motivation, attitude, and can help with concentration. If someone's telling themselves to do a task, they'll focus a lot more on that task. But self-talk shouldn't be used too much because it tends not to work over a long period of time. There's also negative self-talk. more self-talk is negative, which is counterproductive and can increase anxiety. A good example of self-talk is Muhammad Ali. He would constantly tell people that he was the greatest or the best, even before he knew that he was going to be. This would help to motivate him and make him better when he actually went for the title shot, because he believed that he was greater because he said it. The next thing used widely in sports is goal setting. Goal setting is where a person decides that they want to achieve something, and then they have to decide how they're going to achieve it. There's different kinds of goals. Outcome goal is not under an athlete's control, and it's something like being the best. They can't control it because they can't control how good the other athletes are. It's something to strive for, but it's not something they will directly control. Next is performance goals. Performance goals is something an athlete's trying to achieve, like running further or running the distance faster than they did before. It's much needed for sprinters and things like that, because they want to travel the distance as quick as possible, not maybe thinking about the other people who are sprinting as well. The next one is process goals. These are goals that are completely under an athlete's control. Goal setting is used to motivate athletes and help them keep their training on track. Goal setting can also be negative if the goals are unrealistic or the goals just can't be kept up. Different things like occupation can affect this, things like that, or maybe commitments in other play. A good example of goal setting is Conor McGregor. He told that his friends and family that he was going to be a millionaire within the next few years. He then went into the UFC to fight professionally, and he made millions over the next few years by hyping up fights and increasing the promotion value of the fight.